Hello. If you have verified that your awareness fluctuates and that sometimes you're more aware than others, and you've begun to make the effort to produce consciousness, but find that it's very hard to sustain it. An analogy is that it's kind of like trying to fill a colander or a sieve with water. One keeps pouring water in, but it just runs out. It's necessary to block all of the holes, all of the leaks, in order to contain the water. And in the same way with consciousness, you make the effort to be conscious, but then you have to find out what your leaks are. And we have personal leaks that come as a result of our upbringing and the circumstances we've been exposed to. And we also have more general ones that we share with everyone. There's something called the Johari Window, which is like a window with four sides or panes in it. One of them only we see and no one else sees. Another one we see and other people see too. Then another of them we don't see and nobody else sees. And then the one which is useful for getting feedback about our behavior is the one that other people see but we don't see. Robert Burns, the Scottish poet, said in one of his poems, "O wad some power the giftie gie us, to see ourselves as others see us. It would fae mony a foolish notion free us, what airs in dress and gait would lee us, and e'en devotion." By this he means that if we could see ourselves objectively, then we would see how silly some of our behavior might appear. And it might change, having that knowledge might change the way that we behaved and even our beliefs. But more importantly, in relation to consciousness, having feedback about the sides of ourselves that we can't see could be very useful for filling some of those gaps. There's something called the monkey mind, an expression that's been produced, where the mind is constantly busy with things, jumping from, as it says from the Indian literature, jumping from one tree to another without fruit. Sometimes people are plagued with a song or a saying that gets stuck in their mind and they can't get rid of it or stop it. I used to have this problem with the lyrics of songs and poetry, which would become stuck and be on repeat incessantly, until I had the genius idea one day of instead of it consuming me, to make it produce me. Every time this song came round, I would, instead of becoming annoyed and burning energy, I would use it to remind me to be conscious in the moment. This would be an example of turning lead into gold, or transformation. In the human machine, regarded as a machine, of course we're not a machine, although we've been called a biochemical soft machine at times, which is quite good. But as a machine, we have different brains. We have an instinctive brain, a moving brain, which is very little known in the West, an emotional brain, which pretty much everyone's aware of, and an intellectual brain. Then we have a completely separate brain, which is related to sex and the choosing of partners, the wish to reproduce. Then we have some higher possibilities, the higher brains. In the Indian analogy of the human being as a house, it's said that we have beautiful rooms upstairs full of treasure, but we very rarely go there, and we prefer to stay down in the dark cellar instead. Each brain can also be divided into three parts. There's the mechanical bottom part, the cellar, which works completely on momentum and runs itself. Then an emotional part above that, the first floor, if you like, which is also runs on momentum. And then the upper floor, the second floor, where there needs effort, sustained effort, to keep it working. A useful analogy for thinking about this is for the moving brain, where when, as a child, or even as an adult, if you haven't already learned, you learn to ride a bike or to swim. At first, when learning it, you have to concentrate all of the time in order to learn it. But eventually, in the same way as driving a car, it becomes relegated and put down into the automatic part of that brain. And then you don't have to think about it or make intellectual effort at all. It happens automatically, which is quite good in one sense, because then you don't have to think about it anymore. But in another sense, it means that we're working on autopilot. When we're in the upper room of each center and having to make effort, it's a little closer to the higher parts of us, the upstairs, if you like, that we don't visit very often. But even it is still mechanical on one level. And when we get into the higher level, there's a kind of a surrender takes place. Then we can truly be said to be not mechanical. Becomes like an open acceptance. If you consider our vision, which is illusory often, the brain's finishing stuff off of its own accord. I'm sure you've had the experience when you look in a mirror some days and think, oh my God, I look terrible. I look ugly. Ugh. And then other days you look and think, I'm not looking too bad today. This would be an example of the emotional brain finishing stuff off for us according to how our state mechanically was that day. If you consider our vision as being fixed very often upon different things, becomes blinkered like a horse and looks first at one thing, then at another, then at another, in this way, then consider just accepting all of the visual input in the same way as one does in Tai Chi. One has unfocused eyes and takes everything in at the same time. It's quite a useful exercise and analogy for a more open and receptive state, which we can't be in perhaps all of the time, but can be very beneficial to try to be in some of the time. Until next time, bye for now.